Joining us on the line, we have former Socceroo and media commentator Clint Bolton. Clint, thank you for joining the Balabol World Cup program. How are you?
I'm good. Looking forward to 4 weeks of sleepless nights, plenty of coffee, but it's football and just couldn't be happier.
Yeah, that's right. What have you made of the Socceroos' performances so far under Bernd van Marwijk?
Well, their measure of success at this World Cup is simply going to be whether they get out of the group stage or not. So it's purely results-based, and when you look at the last two matches in isolation, then they're on the right track in a lot of ways. It's purely about getting a result, but you dig a bit deeper, and there's clearly a lot of issues still there, but nothing that's taken us by surprise that we didn't already know. That those issues were already there. So, they're pretty much where I thought they might be, apart from them scoring a few more goals than I thought they might against the Czech Republic. But they go into this first game against France with a boost in confidence. But if France are on, we'll still be in trouble.
Yeah, Clint, you talk about that. That forward press that we had, especially in that Hungary game, and even Czech Republic scoring 4 goals. But do you think in that first game against France that we might even play conservative at all, or do you think we just go about our same game plan that we did in those 2 friendlies?
Well, we won't go the way we did against Hungary. I just think we looked tired. To me, you talk about the forward press, and there wasn't much. Hungary got out of it quite comfortably, just simply by a couple of short passes and a big switch, and our front four were done and dusted pretty much every time. So I just think that was just a level of fatigue that had been built up over weeks of solid training for the Socceroos. So I don't read too much into it from that point of view. Against France, if it was under Ange, they're going to press high. Ange would have had them pressing high, and I always believe when you're up against good teams, there's no point sitting off them. I prefer to get up in their faces and try and cause turnovers and create opportunities like that. But I think Bert will sit back, pretty much like he did against Hungary, sat back, towards the halfway line. Then, if you narrow the focus a little bit to individual performances and look at where Hungary exposed us, does he then start to look at, for example, like a Risdon, who's more of an attacking right fullback? Does he have in the back of his mind maybe we just conserve against France and throw a Dejanak, who's more a defensive-minded player, in there? So you just start to think about certain positions. Rogic didn't offer much in attack. He doesn't offer a hell of a lot in defence either. So does he make a change there? But from Bert's recent history, or history in general, he doesn't change much. If you look back at 2010 with the Dutch, he only used 14 players pretty much throughout that whole tournament. So he doesn't change much. So I expect him to start pretty much the way he did against Hungary. But if he changed 1 or 2, that wouldn't surprise me.
Who do you think's going to start up front for Australia?
Well, who I want to start up front is probably different to who's going to start up front. He'll go with Naboot, I imagine. I want to see a traditional number 9 play. So if that's not Tommy Juric, I want to see Jamie McLaren. But it doesn't look like Jamie's going to get a run. And it's more likely that Tommy Juric will get a start if he goes for a more traditional number 9. But he won't. He'll go with Naboot for sure. He'll look for the pace of the wide players and Naboot in behind in transition and hope that works.
When we look at the midfielders we have, obviously I think we've got 4 probably players that are worth starting in Jedinak, Moy, Rogic and Luongo. Can you see that maybe at some point Jedinak maybe pushing to next to Sainsbury and having the other 3 play in the middle, or would you like to see Jedinak holding his spot in defensive midfield?
Well, I don't think he'll shift to centre-back because it just hasn't happened in the warm-up matches, and I don't expect him to do it. He'll stick with Milligan unless he has a disaster. Jedinak, for me, the real question mark's around Tommy Rogic. He hasn't shown much in the warm-up matches. The style of football that Bert wants to play doesn't particularly suit him. So I'd actually look at shifting Rogic out, putting Jedinak in, and either pushing Aaron up into that attacking midfield role or Luongo. So that's the way I'd go. But it doesn't look like that'll happen.
What about Daniel Arzani? Would you start Daniel Arzani, or do you think leave him as a super sub?
Yeah, you can't start him because he hasn't developed other sides of his game to operate at the top level for 90 minutes. Because of the style of football we're going to play, it's going to be a lot of defensive efforts by each and every individual. So we're going to be under the pump for long periods. So it doesn't really suit Daniel at this stage of his career, but you throw him on. Whatever the game needs in the second half in particular, throw him on. If it's early, it's earlier. If it's a bit later, then save him for a bit later. But he needs to feature because he's a game breaker, and I don't imagine we'll be leading games too often towards the back end of games. So we'll be tight, drawing at some stages and then throw him on. But I want to see more of him, that's for sure.
Now, when we look at the squad overall, how do you think the strength of the 23-man squad goes against the team we sent over in Germany in 2006 and probably the last two teams that kind of bombed out in those group stages?
You're liking it to 4 years ago under Ange, and for me it's at a similar stage as that team 4 years ago. It's still a transitional period for the national team. For me that's just self-evident. It doesn't compare to the 2006 or 2010 squads. But that's just the way it is. It's not a knock on them, those players. It's just they're the best of what we have, and we get behind them regardless. But this my issue is around this short-termism that we've gone back to. We've regressed to since Ange is gone. We've gone back to the short-term approach it's purely about this World Cup, getting out of the group, and then we'll continue this four-year cycle where we just try and qualify again for the World Cup, just try and get out of the group. For me, and possibly this is because I was a player, I'm always looking to win things. So how do we set ourselves up long term to put ourselves in a position where we're challenging for titles or where we can go deep into a World Cup? And that's where I fully bought into what Ange was doing. I was right behind Ange and his attitude adjustment. He had players believing they could operate at a higher level, and he also had the public believing in what he was doing. So I miss Ange. I think that's probably pretty obvious. But in the short term, we've got a World Cup to focus on. I just narrow the focus to this, next couple of weeks, and I get behind the team. I don't expect them to get out of the group, but if they do, then fantastic. But again, I just feel like we've regressed in our attitudes, and now we're back. We've taken a step back, and I just want to think about winning something.
Yeah. Last time we spoke to you, it was the day that Ange Postecoglou, the reports came out that Postecoglou was leaving the national job. Since then, we've got Van Marwijk and also Graham Arnold after the World Cup. Do you think that the Graham Arnold appointment is also a transgression back to old-style Socceroos instead of moving forward as we were under Postecoglou?
Remains to be seen. You can only hope that Arnie has a long-term view to the gig, and it's not just purely about getting to another World Cup. He's going to set the team up so that years down the track we can actually go deep. But recent history shows that Arnie at Sydney FC was purely results-driven, and it worked. At a club, he won things. So does that transition into the current setup of the Socceroos? Probably not. But that's not to say he understands that and changes things. So we just wait and see.
Now we'll talk about the end of the tournament. Who do you think will be the last two teams standing, and who will be holding up the World Cup come the end of the tournament?
Clear favourites are Brazil. They're just been compelling in the period since Tite took over. Don't be fooled. Tite is a pretty pragmatic sort of coach. He's got them operating a lot better defensively as a unit. He even has Neymar buying into more defensive duties and such. So that's where the real change for Brazil is. And you can see since under Tite, they've just been unbelievable. And I firmly believe Spain will be right there as well. They've been flawed since the Euros, where they got knocked out. They haven't lost since then. So the two teams will be there at the end, I reckon.
Yeah, and Lionel Messi, do you think he needs to win this World Cup to be considered the greatest of all time?
Argentina, for me, are the romantic story of this World Cup. I would love nothing more than to see Messi lead Argentina to ultimate victory, like Diego did back in '86. The fondest memories of my football youth was Diego just running the show at a World Cup, pretty much carrying his team to the ultimate glory in football. And I would love nothing more than to see Messi do that, because just think for a second the weight of expectation that is on his shoulders from a nation, and he's carried that through a long period now. He's gotten to 4 finals and lost every time. There was no better story of this World Cup if Messi led Argentina to victory.
All right, thank you very much, Clint. We appreciate your time on the show.
Too easy, guys.